So we were talking about the difference between the kitchen table conversations and the R&R workshops. And I think one of the main differences is that when we're in the kitchen table, we're coming from the place of grief with everything we talk about. We're talking about the person we lost, the difficulties in losing them, how to move on. The R&R has a different vibe where it's less about the grief and more about what comes next and putting things back together. And I find myself talking more about me and my future and less about the past and what I already lost and the painful parts. Some of the painful stuff comes up a little bit, but a lot of it is positive, sometimes serious, sometimes not so serious, but it's more about a future orientation. And I think when we're caught up in the grief, we're not thinking about the future. You can't see what's coming the next day or the next week or month. And once you've gotten through the hardest part of that, then it's time to look more at what's coming next. And I feel like that's the switch, and that's sort of the difference in which group you should be joining, or how far along you are in your journey. When you're really new, I don't know if you'll be able to appreciate the nuances of the R&R, but if you've been around for a while, probably the grief thing, I think, would always be helpful, but you're ready for something else. So I think that I picture them as earlier and later in that way.
I realized that there were areas that could enrich my life, things I could do that were within my reach to help me along, my journey of maybe self-fulfillment or happiness. And they weren't necessarily giant things. They were things like picking up knitting again. I used to love to knit, and I just stopped. And I was in such a happy place when I was knitting. Why don't I do that anymore? Taking a journey back to a location that I explored at one time, that I really found happiness there. And I realized that I need to find a way to get back to that place. I felt like a different person there, and I really decided that that is something that would truly feed my soul, and I have the ability to make it happen. I was happy to be in a room with folks that at that time I assumed were all attempt survivors. Realizing that there were loss survivors there as well, honestly was a little bit intimidating for me, because I wasn't sure how I should relate to them or could relate to them. After being in that workshop for some time, I realized that it was really a harmonious exchange all around. We all learned from each other, and were able to see a different side of kind of the same problem, the same tragedy.
So someone had asked last time, once you've done the R&R, whether you could come back and do it again. And the first time I looked at it, I thought, well, once you've done all these exercises, they're cool, and you've done them, and you've learned them. But now I've sat in on it. I did it once all the way through. I've sat in on a couple of other sessions, and then I just went through it as a train the trainer. And each time, it was really different. I focused, not wildly different. A lot of the things on my wish list were the same. A lot of the things I was angry about were the same or overlapped. But there were different nuances each time because it was, in 6 months, I'm a different person. I'm thinking about different things. And because of the nature of talking with people, something I hadn't thought of the first time, someone would mention and I'd say, oh, yeah, me too. I didn't think of it that way. So the passage of time and the combination of people, I think really do make it different every time. So if someone gets a lot out of it and wants to do it again, I think it's fabulous. And I honestly think it's a great self-reflection and tool for growth. Even if you're not a loss survivor, I think it's just a really good thing for people to do and use to refocus and reflect on what they want.